Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Uninsured Ankles podcast. I'm your host and moderator, Nick Swanson. Joining me in our eclectic group of hoopheads is Haley Everett, Jordan Stratton, and Josh Barton. Welcome, everyone. And fellas, NBA season's a week away. How you feeling? How we doing?
I'm getting amped up. It's
Getting
been
amped?
it's been a dry summer with not a whole lot of sports going on. So I'm ready to dive in full force.
Did the Olympics not satiate you?
Look, I was moving while the Olympics were happening, so I didn't get my fill. I got a lot of it on social media, but it doesn't do it justice. So we're in dire need of some sport.
All right. Any
Let me
opening
just say
thoughts?
that
Yeah.
let me just say that this beauty behind me is getting unveiled in the Boston Garden for Banner 18. So let's go.
Josh, I got a trivia question for you. How many of those banners do the Lakers have?
They have 12.
Okay. Just making sure. I thought they had
5 from
17.
Minnesota. 5 from Minnesota.
Should we jump into our first segment? So every year for the past
Do
few
it.
years, we have been doing overs and unders as a collective, and this will be the first year we share them publicly. So there's real weight on these, right? So let's jump into some of our takes for over unders for the year. Um, we had some consensus on a few. So some of the consensuses we had were, unders. Everybody thought Raptors, Wizards, and Jazz were going to hit the unders. So we were all out on them. Some of the teams that were super high on, Nugs, T-Wolves, Hawks, Bucks, and I think that's it. Um, so Spurs as well. Can't forget about Wemby and the Spurs. He's also on our overs list. So those are kind of where we're hitting, consistently over and above. But we got some dissent in the ranks, gentlemen. What are we thinking here? Let's start from the top. Boston Celtics. I think Josh is riding high off of his championship. Haley and I are still drinking the Kool-Aid with him. But Jordan hitting the under on 57 and a half wins. Well, talk to me a little bit about that one.
You know, I think it's historically been seen throughout the league that coming off of a championship win, you normally see some regression. Now, I know Josh is going to come in and tell you that, oh, the Celtics have been putting in the work this offseason. Tatum and Brown have been in the gym together. Like, of course they're in the gym together. They play basketball, all right? They're gonna hang out in the gym. All right. There's gonna be a regression. Now, I'm not here to say that they're not going to be probably the top team in the East, but we see some regression to you know from the mountaintop. There's got to be some letdown, especially when, well, I guess Tatum didn't play much over the summer, so he's I would say that guys that play in the Olympics normally don't have quite the same legs, but given that he played terrible in the exhibition matches and thus didn't earn any playing time. He's got plenty of legs for the season.
And it could be a little extra rest after playing for so long in the postseason, but uh,
Olympics aside, the one comment I will make on that, because I'm sure the Celtics will come up later, but I think there are concerns, especially with Porzingis missing at least the first 2 months of the season, possibly more. You guys know I absolutely love Kristaps Porzingis. Kristaps Porzingis' body does not love him as much as I do. So we're going to miss him, and he's kind of the key that unlocked our offense last year. So I think it's plausible. I think also the fact that we won the East by 14, 15 games last year, even a regression to the mean, I still think works in our favor. But they will come up later.
solid. All right, let's move on to the next team, the Brooklyn Nets. Three of us had the under on 19 and a half wins. 19 and a half wins is not a lot of wins. So that means we're all pretty much out on them. But there's one gentleman, again, who had the over. And I'm not saying this is a heavy bar to clear, but Jordan, why the over?
Look, you said it. It's not a heavy bar to clear, and I'm thinking about who I believe is going to be at the bottom of the East, and it kind of came down to, when I do my overs and unders, I try to kind of make things even. I want a relatively even amount of overs and unders. So I was looking at my good friends in the great district of Washington, and their win total number was slated at 21 and a half, and our friends in Brooklyn were listed at 19 and a half. And I said to myself, one of these two teams is going to have a number of wins in the teens. I see no reason why the Washington Wizards should win more than 15 games. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, let's just say that our good friends in Brooklyn sweep the season series against the Wizards. They're well on their way to hitting their 20 win total. So um that pick is more of a knock against the Wizards than it is pro the Brooklyn Nets.
I think they both can be bad. And the Wizards do have something, spoiler alert, that Brooklyn doesn't, which is Corey Kispert and his mustache. So just putting that out there.
And they do
Um,
have the reigning Shaqtin' a Fool MVP, Jordan Poole. So,
mm, he does. Yeah, he is that. All right, let's keep moving. New York Knicks are next, 53 and a half. Subject to a lot of moving around with Randall and DiVincenzo moving out and Cat coming in. We were pretty split on the overs and unders, but Haley, you picked the under. What's going on with the under on that one?
This isn't necessarily a knock on the Knicks as a whole. So their win total is 53 and a half, and that feels a little steep for a team that's six deep realistically, and they're already down Mitchell Robinson for a period of time. I just don't feel like they have the depth to win 54 games. I know Tom Thibodeau will have them competing for 50 wins, as he always does, but they don't have enough players beyond their top six really to if they have any injuries, which inevitably somebody will go down. It's part of being in the league, but just feel like that's going to damage their goals of getting to 54, 55 wins. I still take them for 50, but just kind of coming up short on that number.
All right, let's move on from the Knicks and let's head over to the Philadelphia 76ers, who revamped their lineups, acquired Paul George. We were pretty split amongst them. 51 and a half was the line. Two of us over, two of us under. Josh, you're one of the overs. What's going on with the Sixers? Yeah, this is wild for me coming from you as a Celtics fan, but I need your take on this.
This one was hard to write down, but you kind of hit the main point in the open. They traded out Tobias Harris with Paul George. I think that's good enough for at least 4.5 wins. Joel Embiid is one of the most injured stars in NBA history, probably. But even the most injured stars, have at least one season of health. And I feel like the stars are aligning for Philadelphia to have a really good season and hit that over.
The stars aligning, meaning the script is being written for Joel.
I've heard it both ways.
Fair enough. Let's keep moving. Chicago Bulls. Again, we had pretty well consensus of the over of 26 and a half. I think there's a lot of believers here, but there's one standout who believe they're actually going to perform on the under. Is this the Giddy effect? What's going on, Josh? Why are we going under on 26 and a half for the Bulls?
It's honestly nothing personal with the Bulls. I just think the top of the East is really good. You have Boston, you have New York, you have Philly, you have Milwaukee, and I think those teams are going to dominate the poorer teams in the conference. Chicago's in the same conference as Milwaukee. Indiana's another team that's going to be really good. The Detroit Pistons, who I think are going to be good, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty in Chicago. I'd be surprised maybe if Zach LaVine stays the whole year. You're integrating Josh Giddey into that team. Lonzo Ball's hopefully coming back. So, if they hit the over with Lonzo Ball having a great year, I will eat this take and be happy about it. But I think it's more to do with the teams around Chicago than Chicago themselves.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. Let's keep in the same conference. Let's go Cleveland Cavaliers. Again, another split decision, overs and unders. Haley, you're one of the unders for 48 and a half. What are you not believing in that 48 and a half from the Cavs?
Yeah, this one's a tough one for me because I'm a big Kenny Atkinson believer, and I do think that their offense should improve quite a bit under Kenny. I the main thing that I worry about with the Cavs is their depth. Also, I know I said the same thing for the Knicks, but they don't have a lot after their starting five. Depending on who they run out as their kind of second or third wing. Um, it's either Okoro or Strus, which probably Okoro off the bench, and then Levert and Niang are really their best three role players. And I feel like they're just missing another piece to really kind of make that a cohesive group and give them enough depth to get over that hump and get to what is 48 and a half is the line. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know that they can quite get there without another piece.
Solid. Cool.
It'll be close though.
Yeah.
I'm back and forth on that one. So
No,
Especially with your taking the unders on the Magic. They seem like they're around this. Am I gonna pull back here?
we're not
I'm
there
getting
yet.
ahead of myself. I'm so sorry.
reeling that back in. We're good. Let's keep going to the next team. Team near and dear to my heart, my hometown team, Detroit Pistons. They have the lowly line of 25 and a half, and I'm a believer, but there's one of us who's not. Jordan, what's going on with the Pistons? Why no belief?
Why should I believe? I haven't seen it. They didn't add that much this offseason. We talked about them adding Tobias Harris. I have I have very seldom seen so much slander for a player than in our group chat during the playoffs this year around Tobias Harris's name, and it was not coming from me. I was riding the Tobias Harris bandwagon in the playoffs, and there was a lot of hate coming from the other three gentlemen on this call. And so if we're saying that the best addition that they've made is Tobias Harris, and we're just gonna assume that Cade is gonna, I don't know, be an MVP candidate or something, then sure. If that happens, I will happily tip my cap and melt into the foreground. But I don't see it happening with Cade. I think he's a great player, but I don't think he's gonna be, a first team All NBA type guy. And really, that's what they need to get over the hump. And what did we say? It was 26 and a half or something like that.
25 and a half.
25 and a half. I think there's other teams that are right around that mark, like the Chicago Bulls, that have just as good, if not much better core pieces. And so I'm going to put my money on those teams before the Pistons.
That's fair. I'm just gonna lay my stake as incremental steps from everybody because it's a young team. But that's where I'm crutching on at least as a Pistons fan.
Hit that
Um,
over, Nick. Hit that over.
I'm hitting that over. I'm hitting all of that over. I'm a believer. I may have had a hot take in our group thread about them making the playoffs this year, but or at least the play in. That might be a little too hot to handle, but hey, 25
Say
and a
it,
half,
say
I
it,
can
say
handle
it
that
with
over.
your chest, Nick. What are they going to do?
They're going to be in the play in this year. They're going to do
10
it.
seed. 10 seed.
You heard it
Yep.
here first. Pistons
Yep.
playing team.
Yep. All right. Indiana Pacers. Again, we're pretty split down the middle on overs and unders for 46 and a half. I'm a I'm a big Pacers believer. I like Halliburton. I like Siakam. I think they're going to put some pieces together and make a move. I think Josh alluded to this before with the East being totally top heavy. I think that leaves a pretty big dearth of who's going to fill out the middle, who's going to fill out the bottom. And I think the teams like the Pacers and the Magic are going to be right there at the 5-6 spot, and I see Pacers kind of filling right in there. So I think 46 and a half seems right. And they'll hit the over.
It helps when your best player has a working hamstring too.
Yeah.
It tends to help.
Well, that wraps up the East Central. Let's move on to our hometown team where we all have lived at one point in time, which is North Carolina. So the Charlotte Hornets have a lowly 29 and a half. And there are three overs, and again, one under. Jordan, you're kind of the dissenting opinion here. Why are we going under on the 29 and a half Charlotte Hornets?
Look, if they can put together a season where LaMelo Ball stays healthy for the full year and they get, you know, they get his potential out of him, then they could easily hit the overs on that number. But like Josh alluded to already, like we've talked about, there's a lot more talent, I think, in the East than there has been the past couple seasons, and they didn't add a lot of it. They've got a couple pieces that I like. But if your star player can't stay healthy, then you're not going to win games. Bottom line.
That's fair. That's totally fair. And I'm not sure I'm a believer in Miller either to evolve and become a player for them. So it's a fair take. Um, next team on the list is the Miami Heat. We've got 3 unders at 43.5 and 1 over. Josh, why are we shooting the over on Miami Heat? What's there to believe in?
The last few years, literally, this team won't die. It doesn't matter who they lose. It doesn't matter who gets hurt. It doesn't matter what happens. This team is always the only team in the East that scares me is Miami, which makes no sense because they have the least amount of talent out of all of the top teams. And if we draw Miami in the first round, I'm going to be panicking the entire season. I think this is the first year in 3 or 4 years that Jimmy Butler is going to take the regular season seriously. And as we keep saying over and over again, the East, there's the opportunity for a team to at least fill out to the middle. I think that's 45 wins easy for them. And Jimmy Butler is the best player of all the guys that we've talked about when he's healthy, when he's engaged. I think Pat Riley calling him out at the end of last year is going to help him be engaged. He looks healthy. And Bam's coming off the Olympics, and I think Bam's going to have a big year too. And the East sucks. Everyone under Miami. So hit that over.
One little tidbit that I've got to add that because I don't think we're going to touch on this later. We are going to talk about our rookies later on, but of the sleeper rookie of the year picks, I'm a big Ware guy. I think he could be the kind of player that fits perfectly for Spoelstra, where the the qualms that you have with him coming in on his report are his work ethic and, him not being a very good glue guy, but you can't be in that locker room and not buy in. And if he doesn't, he's going to ride the bench. But if he does buy in and actually, it does what he's told to do by Spoelstra, he's got all the skills and pieces to be a fantastic player. I mean, the athleticism alone will take him far. Kind of maybe a Nick Claxton kind of player if he can develop a little bit. So I'd be curious to see how he does this year.
I've
The
heard he's
on-court
lively with a 3-point shot. Somebody was comparing him earlier, but I'm not a
the,
believer. That's just what I've been hearing comparisons for.
the on-court stuff is great, but just look at his all-time starting five that he put out there during rookie week. It is the worst all-time starting five I've ever heard, and I'm just out on him. If you're going to say that those guys are the all-time starting five, I'm out.
There's no doubt it is the worst one I've ever heard.
Doesn't matter, doesn't impact your ability to play basketball. Move on. Next
All
next
right,
team.
let's move on to Orlando Magic. We are 47.5 on the Magic. We've got a bunch of overs. We got some believers. We got some truthers. We got Franz. We got Paulo. But somebody's hitting the under. Who's hitting the under, Haley? Why are we doing this?
I'm not a believer. Everything hinges on all their guys taking another step. I know that Paolo's supposed to be the next coming of like LeBron James Jr. I don't see them being that much better on offense. That's where the struggle was for them last year. They didn't improve on that end, really. I know that they got KCP, and KCP will spread the floor a little more, but they need people to be able to facilitate. And again, Franz and Paolo, as good as they are at doing that for their particular positions, I don't think that they can do it on their own. They need another guard who can be a substantial point guard, like a Mike Conley type facilitator who knows how to get people into an offense, and they don't have that right now. And I'm a big Suggs believer. I love Suggs, but that's not necessarily his forte.
Fair enough. I dig it. All right, that wraps the East. Let's transition to the West. First team in the West, the team that is near and dear to, I think, everybody in this thread's heart, which is the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? They're the young up and comers. We're all believers and truthers. 56 and a half. Everybody took the over except me. So this is just kind of playing the overs and unders game a little bit. I think they're a young team. I think they're going to potentially regress. And I think there's just, a little bit of unstable ground they're sitting on because of the youngness that they have. And I think they're gonna go through some growing pains throughout the course of the season. I think still dudes are figuring out their roles. SGA is unbelievable. He's going to be steady at the helm, but I think everybody else is a little bit tenuous at points in time. They got to figure out some of what that chemistry looks like. That's just kind of a shot in the dark. I'm still a believer in the Thunder as a whole, though. So that's kind of where I'm at on them. After the Thunder, we got the Blazers. They're at 21 and a half. We've got three folks who are believing in them in the overs, but one with the under. Josh, what do we got with the under?
So Portland is a lot like Chicago. I like a lot of the pieces that Portland has. I'm a big Denny Avdia fan. I just think the West is going to be a gauntlet. Portland has shown in the last few years that they kind of want to be bad. And this is the draft where you want to be really bad. And I think between just the top end talent, 1 through, 12, 13 in the West, it's a perfect spot for them to be bad and, get a great prize in Cooper Flag or whoever they might choose if they can get the top pick. So I think they're going to play the young guys a lot. They'll try out the Sharp Scoot Henderson pairing. Lose a lot of games in the process. Let them grow through those and ultimately become better players. I think in a few years this team will probably be pretty good, honestly. But this is not their year.
Can I ask a quick show of hands or ayes or nays? Are we believers in Scoot? Haley is a yes. Jordan?
I think, and I know we're going to dive into players that we think have some upside this year later. I think because of a lot of the reasons that Josh mentioned, he's going to have ample opportunity to prove himself. I think if he doesn't, then we could see him, pulling back into a more, he's going to settle into a role player kind of position, kind of like a Suggs, where you talked about he's not going to be the guy that's going to facilitate your entire offense, and he's not going to be super efficient, but he's going to be scrappy. He's going to make some electric plays. Um, that's kind of the spot that I see him fitting into. I'm not completely out on him. He's not going to be a total bust, I don't think, but if we don't see some major strides forward, I don't think that he's going to be able to get over the hump.
Josh, yay, nay, in, out?
I'm in the middle. I agree with a lot of what Jordan just said. I think out of him, Sharp, and Denny Avdia, he's probably has the third high ceiling, the lowest ceiling out of the three of them. I think Sharp's the guy to build around. He has all the skills, the talent. Scoot Scoot just doesn't have the feel for me, which I think limits his ceiling. He has all the physical attributes. He's a hard worker, but you watch him and he doesn't have the feel of, the top level guys.
He also can't shoot.
Also a thing.
I think I'm still on Team Scoot. I think he can pull it around. I think he can become a Russell Westbrook type player, but we'll see. All right, let's move on from the Blazers onto our favorite Golden State Warriors. 42 and a half. We're pretty split down the middle with overs and unders. Jordan, what you feeling with the Golden State Warriors?
I gotta say, I think they're due for a down year. I mean, between losing Clay, aging Draymond, aging Curry. Now, don't hear me saying that I don't think Steph's gonna have a good year. I think he's still amazing. But also he hasn't had any injuries in a while, which, he's the kind of player with the speed at which he's flying around and his ankle history. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't if he played 60 games. If he had a 60 game season, I don't think they hit that number. They need a full 82 game kind of season out of Curry with massive amounts of production if they're gonna be a 500 team.
That makes sense. I buy that. All right, let's move on to the Clippers, the second team in Los Angeles. Jordan, you're gonna get three teams in a row here. So this is team number two. What are we thinking about with the Clippers?
I see no reason to buy in on the Clippers. I think the perfect comparison at this point in his career for James Harden is Aaron Rodgers. And the kind of that he's got a bunch of truthers still, but he's old. He's slow. He doesn't shoot as well as he used to. Has more, his turnover to assist ratio is way down. I don't see him being the kind of guy that's going to lead them to wins. He's going to have a couple good games, just like Rodgers will have a couple good games. He'll go for 40 probably a couple times this season, and all the truthers will come out of the woodwork and say, "Oh, he's back." But end of the day, I don't think there's any reason to believe that he's going to put together a crazy season. Kawhi hasn't shown consistency in being able to be on the court, and you lost Paul George. So I think that amount pretty much sums it up.
Yep. All right. Next team in our run of three for you, Jordan, is the Los Angeles Lakers, the team that's near and dear to your heart. They're at 42 and a half. Haley took the under. Josh took the under. I took the under. You took the over. What you got?
I got a couple things. That first off, I don't think the West got really any better in this last off season. They've been notoriously deep, and I don't think they got any deeper. I think they lost a couple stars to the East. Um, and so I don't think that the competition really changed a whole lot. And they were an above 500 team last year. They drafted a shooter, which is exactly what they needed. And you know LeBron's going to find his shooters. At the end of the day, they have the GOAT on the floor. So I think they're going to be able to be an above 500 team, and they need to only be above 500 by two or three games. So
Yep.
um, I'm slamming the overs.
Love it. Cool. Next team on the list, Phoenix Suns. We are split down the middle with overs and unders. Josh and Haley had the overs. Me and Jordan had the unders. Haley, why are you smashing the over button?
Easy. The Bud effect. Everywhere he goes, he turns teams around, makes them more efficient on offense, makes them run a tighter defense. Like as a Hawks fan, he carried a not a not that our team was bad, but we were very middling in terms of talent, and we were the best. The Hawks were the best team in the East in the regular season for a couple of years, and as y'all know, had the starting five player of the month. That was still one of the coolest things in NBA history, whether you like it or not. And he just has that effect everywhere he goes. He's gonna get them into an offense where the floor is going to be better spread. They're already talking about Nurkic shooting more threes. Even if that's not the most efficient shot for him, it will help spread that floor, open up the spacing for the main three. I know that there's still questions around Bradley Beal, but Booker and Durant are still peak of their talents. They're amazing right now. And I'm a big believer. I'm also a believer in the point guards that they brought in. Those are dudes who can get people into their offense, into spaces that they need to be, and they don't turn the ball over. And that's the type of point guard that those guys need. So excited to see what they do. Honestly, I am not a big fan of Booker and Beal, but I'm kind of excited to see the way that Bud has them playing because I think it'll be a really fun brand of basketball. I always love Nurkic. So excited to see what the Bud effect is in Phoenix.
They also
Bingo.
had terrible injury luck last year too. So you got to think that even though the trio of Booker, Beal, and Durant aren't the healthiest group, it can't be worse than last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you
Knocks
guys
on
have
wood
me convinced.
aggressively.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the Sacramento Kings. Split down the middle again. Josh, you're hitting the under. What's going on? Why are we going under on these boys? This is 46 and a half, I think, 45 and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I really like what the Kings did in the offseason getting DeMar DeRozan. I just think 46 is a lot of wins in the East. It's going to be deep, and um, they don't play enough defense to, I think, win enough games. I think they'll be close. I'd probably put them at 45 wins, so I don't think they're going to be all that worse. I just think they're going to lose a ton. They're going to win a ton of close games. We're going to be calling them the Cardiac Kings. Come midseason, and DeMar and De'Aaron Fox are hitting game winners. I just the West is too tough for them to go over 46 and a half, in my opinion.
That's fair. I buy that. So next team is the defending Western Conference champions, which is the Dallas Mavericks. We were pretty well split between these two. I was hitting the under, Jordan was hitting the under, Josh and Haley hitting the over. You guys know my tumultuous history with Luca, right? Like he's grown on me. He's a good player, but he is like the sun. Everything else revolves around him, and I don't think you can revolve around him all the time and be a successful team through and through. He made a nice run in the playoffs. I just see enough variance in him not being able to carry a team through regular season for 50 and a half wins that they're going to make it. That's kind of where I am. I am now on Team Luca as a player, but I just don't think he's got enough going on around him to really support beyond what he does. So that's why I'm taking the under. Uh, Moving on to another team in Texas. Let's go to the Houston Rockets, 43 and a half. Josh, what do you think about that?
I love the Houston Rockets. I think they have talent for days. I also love Ime Udoka, their coach. He had his issues in Boston that have not been fully disclosed to the public, but he got us to the finals, and he kind of laid the building blocks for this past year's championship. And I think if there's a coach in the league currently, in the past it would probably be Greg Popovich, but he's mellowed a lot in his older age. I think Ime is the perfect coach to get all their young talent to kind of gel, coalesce, and put some wins on the court. I think development from all their guys. There's a lot of question marks with what path they go, whether they build around Şengün, whether they build around Jalen Green in the wings. They just have so much talent, and 82 games is a long season, and they have young talent. And I'm just a believer in them hitting that over.
44 games though. That's over 500. Over 500 in the West. Okay.
Gotta
All right.
believe.
I'm just making sure I'm understanding what you're putting down. Next team of the Memphis Grizzlies. We've got 3 overs and 1 under. Jordan, you're the lone wolf on unders. What's going on?
And end of the day, outside of Luke Kennard, I don't believe in any of the people on their team's ability to shoot the ball. Um, they've got some solid size now. I'm excited to see what Edie does, and I think if Edie puts out a Rookie of the Year type performance this season, that they could very easily hit those overs. But I'm not buying it in today's NBA. He looks nice in preseason. He looks nice in the summer league. But I think that he's going to get pulled out into a ton of um, perimeter defense type scenarios, and he's not going to be able to hang. He's going to get burned by some of the guards out there, and I don't believe in their ability to shoot the ball. And it's a shooters league now. Also, has anyone noticed how chunky Marcus Smart looks? Dude looks like he put on like 40 pounds when he was hurt and just over the off season. I'm fully out on Marcus Smart just visually. Can he perform in the same way that he did when he was, winning Defensive Player of the Years, locking up guards? And if he did actually put on like 30 pounds, which it looks like he did, he's not going to be able to stay in front of guys. Like, sure, he's going to be able to punk guys that are, trying to body up down low, but he's not going to be able to hang with a lot of the quick perimeter guards. So, some concerns around their defensive stopper.
I will not allow for full slander of Celtic legend Marcus Smart, but I will acknowledge that at the end of his Celtics tenure, he lost a lot of his quickness. I think he had a couple hip injuries, and those are notorious for robbing guys of their quickness. He also got married the offseason right before the trade to Memphis, so maybe he put on some extra weight post marriage life. I do want to acknowledge the fact that you said there's no shooters on outside of Luke Kennard on the Grizzlies when Desmond Main is a 41% career 3-point shooter. Just want to put that out there for the record.
For the listeners, Haley's putting up an L right now. All right, last team here is New Orleans Pelicans. I have listened to the three of you go around and round about the dudes you love on that team and how they're so fun to watch. And I started drinking the Kool-Aid. I know they don't have a center. I know that they've got some mishmash of pseudo star players between Zion and Ingram and, all these dudes. I don't care. I'm looking at 45 and a half. I feel like they can hit that. If I'm Josh and I'm looking at the Houston Rockets at 43 and a half, do I think that the Pelicans can get 2 or 3 more wins with their vets who know what they're doing? I do. So I am taking the over for New Orleans Pelicans. And I have no real good reason other than y'all mix up some Kool-Aid for me and I'm drinking it. So that's what we're doing. Any other thoughts around overs, unders? I do want to acknowledge that we never talked about Haley's Hawks just because we all are smashing the over. We all are smashing the over because you know what? Death, taxes, and the Hawks being just barely over 500. That's what we got. It's consistent.
Those
So
are certainties right there.
certainty. So there, we all smashed the over with that in mind. Any other thoughts on overs, unders before we jump to our locks?
Let's do it.
All right. Josh, you want to hit us with your three locks for the upcoming year for different teams?
Absolutely. So you talked about Kool-Aid. I have my cup of Kool-Aid right here, and that Kool-Aid is filled with the Memphis Grizzlies. Jordan might be a hater. Jordan might have, I don't know what's going on there out in California, but the Memphis Grizzlies are going to hit that over. Memphis Grizzlies are going to be an amazing team. Everyone is going to be remembering how good Ja Morant is. Last season, Ja Morant was healthy. 2 years ago, they were a 51 team and the second seed in the West. The team last year, not only did they have absolutely terrible injury luck and play, and I think they set the record for the most lineups played and the most players to appear for them. They also didn't have Ja Morant, and those pieces don't really make sense unless you have a guy like Ja Morant. It's like taking Luka off the Mavs. Those guys are not going to be, they're not going to sniff the finals. But Ja Morant makes all of that work. I think Zach Edey is going to be a great addition for them. I mean, they basically switched out Zach Edey for Steven Adams and Marcus Smart for Dillon Brooks. The quickness of Marcus Smart was just acknowledged, but I mean, he's going to be probably the one tasked with guarding the bigger, more physical wings. So I don't think the quickness will hurt him as much. And I think we can all agree that he's a much better decision maker than Dillon Brooks, even if that decision making can be shaky at best. It's still probably better than Dillon the villain.
Banking on Marcus Smart's decision making being better than Dillon Brooks is a tough spot to plant your flag.
Yeah, but
I
he's
have to
not
agree
going to
with
be
Jordan on that.
well.
That's a tough spot.
He's not going to be their primary decision maker. The ball's going to be in Ja Morant's hands. And we think of Ja Morant as this crazy athlete, a lot like Anthony Edwards, but Ja Morant's court vision, his basketball IQ is way higher than Anthony Edwards. I think everyone's forgotten about how good Ja can be given all the craziness that has surrounded him the last year.
I mean, when I think of Ja, I think of some of the things you said, but good decision making in life and on the basketball court are not things I equate with Ja Morant. Like, great basketball player, but like decision making is not something I'm like, oh yeah, that's what he's doing.
Off-court decision making, not a thing. On-court decision making, great. Let's draw the line there.
Fair.
Moving on to my other lock, the Washington Wizards are going under. Aside from the Brooklyn Nets, there's not a worse team in the NBA. Like if we're ranking every team's top player, it comes down to the Brooklyn Nets and the Washington Wizards. And the Brooklyn Nets have some serviceable NBA veterans. They don't really have the guy, but they have guys who can play. The Wizards just they're going to be so bad. They were bad last year. Kyle Kuzma famously tweeted at the Pistons when they were going through their historic win streak, and then they finished with a worse record than the Pistons. I'm out on the Wizards. I also think a team like Washington is going to tank for the aforementioned Cooper Flag, because that just makes sense. And this is the year to lose games. They got a new front office who I think is fully committed to losing games. They're not winning more than 20. I think they're under the line's 21.5. They're not winning that. And
I don't think there's
lastly,
any disagreement from any of us with Jordan Poole and Corey Kispert on their team. So yeah, go for it.
lastly, I think the Philadelphia 76ers are going to be a great team this year. As we mentioned before, they are going to win a lot of games. What I didn't mention before is Tyrese Maxey. His trajectory is just a guy who is going to be a great player in the league. He showed it in the playoffs. Dude's a gamer. He is young. He's durable. Even though Paul George and Joel Embiid have their injury concerns, they still have Tyrese Maxey. A lot of the East is really bad, and I think all of those factors together, Philly's going to hit the over. And it feels weird coming from me. It feels gross. My tongue's tingly right now. I feel a little nauseous. I'm like starting to sweat. I got some weird stuff going on, acknowledging something good's going on in Philadelphia, but here we are.
Go grab yourself a swig of mouthwash, buddy. You'll be all right.
Memphis Grizzlies Kool-Aid.
Love it. Love it. I'll go next on my locks. First on my over, I'm going Golden State Warriors. I'm a believer in Steph. He is amazing. Love what he does. I think he's pretty consistent. I think he'll stay healthy enough. I believe in Podziemski continuing to move forward. I believe in Hield being that sixth man off the bench. I believe in Kuminga continuing to make strides and being a serviceable big man. I believe that Clay is addition by subtraction. I think they're going to be a pretty solid team there. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with all of this. Any thoughts from the group on this take? I see some visual reactions. I want to make sure I'm getting my due here.
Well, I have a lock that can be discussed briefly. You know what? While we're here, I'll just discuss my
Do it.
lock for
Do
the
it. Do it.
unders.
Do it.
First off, we've got Golden State Warriors with the unders, and it's a lock because first off, do not disrespect Clay. That's just uncalled for. I am willing to say Clay is no longer a number two, and that's clear. Nobody's gonna argue that Clay should be the number two player on the floor anymore. He was trying to be that last year, and he couldn't. I think that it's fair to say that he can't be that guy anymore, but having him off your roster is still subtraction. He's still one of the top, well, let's say 7 shooters in the league. I think that's fair enough to say. And even if you have him spotted up in a corner, I will take him taking spot up threes over pretty much anybody, even probably Buddy Hield. Um, so that's a part of it. And then other than that, outside of Steph, who do we trust on that roster? I mean, I don't trust Kuminga. He has a lot of potential. He's very raw. I thought I was bought in on Kuminga last season because I saw it was like the Ben Simmons effect. You see all the workouts over the summer where he's like, oh, he's reworking his shot. He's gonna come out and shoot, 37% from three and be, a reasonable shooter at volume. And then he came out and had a mediocre year. He didn't have a bad year, but he didn't take that next leap to be a number two guy that you can rely on, like a Jalen Williams did for the OKC Thunder. You need him to make that kind of a leap for them to be an above 500 team because teams are just gonna double team Steph. They're gonna blitz every on-ball screen, and they're gonna get the ball out of his hands to who? Who's gonna put the ball in the bucket for him? They are not an above 500 team. And I'm appalled that you guys think that they're an above 500 team and the Lakers aren't. Because y'all were spamming the unders on 43.5 for the Lakers, but hitting the overs for the Warriors when the Lakers have two guys that could very easily be all NBA first and second teamers, and the Warriors have one with no one to back up. I am dismayed and appalled.
to clarify you, I'm on the under island on the Warriors with you, and it's worth acknowledging that we talked about, or we acknowledged the Pelicans not having really any size. Draymond Green is probably past his prime. I think a good historical allegory is Ben Wallace, and Ben Wallace found a very sharp decline around age 33, age 34, which is the exact age that Draymond is. I also don't trust Draymond after last year. He lost his mind when they needed him. His game is dependent on his athleticism, and he's getting older. And I think he's a guy who's going to decline pretty quickly.
I can agree with his body going downhill. He's never had a right mind, dude. I'm not buying that he lost his mind last year. He never quite had it.
Was that when he committed to Michigan State? Is that when he lost his mind?
No, it's when I saw him play for Michigan State. There are some dudes at Michigan State who I can buy. Like I like Gary Harris at Michigan State. Like there are dudes who I reluctantly can appreciate. Draymond was not one of them. All right. I think Jordan makes a good case for why my over for the Golden State Warriors is a little bogus, but I'm still spamming it. I still like it. I'm still locking it in. That's still my move. My locked in under Miami Heat. I just don't think the pieces work anymore. I don't think Jimmy locks in for an entire season. I think Bam just isn't enough. I think he's a little one dimensional. Um, I just don't think this is a 500 team. I think the East is coming up, and they're not coming up. They're kind of staying where they are. And I am not a Khalil Ware fan. Like I just am not. I watch him at Indiana. I watch him at Oregon. Yeah, he's got talent, but he hasn't shown me anything yet, especially in year one, to be like, yeah, he's going to be a dude. I've heard the comparisons to Derek Lively with a 3-point shot. Derek Lively could protect the rim in college. I don't know, and so I can see that translation to the pros. I'm not seeing that for Khalil Ware. So that's my second lock. My dealer's choice lock, the Kings with the over. I love this team. I'm a Domas fan. You guys know that. It's irrational confidence in them. I like Fox. I like Murray. Herter, Monk, core group that's returning, and then they add DeRozan. I think that gives them the extra edge to be better. I think they're going to be great. He's the vet, knows how to win. I think this team will be at least 46 and 36. That seems like an easy pop, so I'm going with that. So
I'm going to hop on your bandwagon there a little bit too, and I think we talked about this a little bit before. Is that that roster might not be a roster that's going to take you to a Western Conference Finals, but that roster is built for the regular season. They're gonna put up 120 points a night easily, and even on the nights that they're not putting up 120 points and blowing you out, they have two guys. They have the two best closers in the NBA, is statistically speaking, on their roster at the same time. So they're going to win a lot of those games that they probably shouldn't, and I think that bodes well for a really good regular season. Maybe a slightly underwhelming playoff performance as the defense ramps up, but
sure.
I'm with you there for a regular season high note.
Jordan, you previewed your lock under with the Golden State Warriors. Who you got for your other two locks?
I'm taking the overs on my Minnesota Timberwolves. I think that the trade that just went down a couple weeks ago is going to be a net positive for them. Obviously, Cat is a fantastic player, but I think they added some grit to that roster that they didn't have in Cat. And this isn't to say that the Knicks got worse. I actually think that the Knicks probably won the trade because they filled a larger need. They needed that size, especially with Robinson being out to start the season. So I think the Knicks probably won the trade, but I think DiVincenzo is a fantastic plug-in for them offensively, because they needed kind of a spark plug type of scorer outside of Edwards. I think we saw that in the playoffs this last year, that when Edwards had a bad game offensively, their offense kind of struggled, especially when they were running two bigs on the court, because that kind of forced Cat to be a spot up shooter when really he's the best with the ball in his hands, either like outside on the perimeter with the ball in his hands or with the ball in the low post, and there wasn't space for him to do that. So adding DiVincenzo gives some extra space, and that extra fire plug offensively. Also, Randall is a great plug-in guy. You can run him at the 4, and he's going to be a much better defender on the perimeter than Cat is. I think that that fills a bigger need for them. When they were running their dual big guy lineups, they could get picked apart on the perimeter, trying to guard pick and rolls because you could drag either Gobert or Cat into pick and rolls, and neither one of them handled it very well. I have been a bit of a Gobert hater, and in part because I think his defensive player of the years are overrated. I think you have somebody that is very big and therefore guards the basket really well, and he does have good help side instincts. But his on-ball defense on the perimeter and even down low, he got kind of picked apart in the playoffs, guarding a variety of big men, some that weren't that good. His on-ball defense leaves something to be desired, and I think adding somebody like Randall who's quicker, to be part of their perimeter defense is fantastic. And then if they're running the dual big lineup with Naz Reid, I'd take him as a spot up shooter over Cat. So realistically, they're not losing a whole lot offensively when they're running Nas instead of Cat and Gobert's on the floor because Cat couldn't be who he was when the two bigs were on the court at the same time. So I think the trade ends up helping them a ton. They got a spark plug. They didn't lose much by losing Cat offensively. They gained some defensively by having extra versatility on the wings. I think it's overall going to be a great win for them. And the only other thing that you got to say is Ant. He's going to be better. He's what? He's 23 years old. He was arguably one of the top 5 players in the league last year. As a 22-year-old, sky's the limit.
I want to echo almost everything of Jordan said because I agree with that. Especially after last night when Dante DiVincenzo went at Jalen Brunson's dad after the preseason game. This team is tough. We haven't talked about not necessarily the rule changes, but the allowance for more physicality. Rick Carlisle, the president of the rules committee, said in the preseason that the games are going to be called looser. They're going to allow more contact, more physicality, and that helps a team like Minnesota, especially adding Randall, who his go-to move is put his head down and just put his shoulder into you. I like the pairing of him with Gobert, and I also love the pairing of him with Naz Reid. You basically play 4 out around Randall, and like Jordan just said, Naz Reid's a great shooter. It's worth mentioning that in the playoffs they closed with Naz Reid because Cat was in foul trouble. So their closing lineup is already basically established. I agree with everything. And I think Ant is going to have the biggest Team USA bump out of any of those Team USA guys. The age, learning from LeBron, learning from KD, Ant's going to have a great year.
Yeah, I'm a believer too. Jordan, you got any more locks for us?
My dealer's choice, under on the Grizzlies. I am such a big Steven Adams enjoyer. I think that loss is going to be much bigger than anybody realizes. He's a veteran presence. He is the hardest screen setter in the NBA, and there's a reason why Ja Morant got a lot of downhill looks in 2 seasons ago, and it was because dudes were getting blasted by Steven Adams. He also had the mentality that fit perfectly with that lineup, the grittiness, and that's part of the reason I picked the overs on the Rockets is adding a dude like Steven Adams who's gonna ground those young guys a little bit, get them a little more focused. But with you're adding somebody like Edie, who's real big, he's gonna set some good screens too, but he's a rook. I don't think he's going to be able to produce the same way that Steven Adams does statistically or in the locker room. And I think that's a major loss for the Grizzlies to not have him in the lineup. I also just don't trust Ja Morant at this point in time. I think he's got to earn that back. He's obviously an electric player. But also, like I mentioned before, I still don't it's a shooter's league at this point. Yes, Desmond Bane is a great player, but I don't see him as a volume spot up shooter. He shot at a reasonably high percentage, but he wasn't shooting a bunch of super high difficulty shots from three. Most of his offensive production was off the dribble, getting into the lane, and he would settle for open three pointers when they're available to him, and he made a good chunk of them. So hats off to him. But he's not going to be someone that's going to be a flamethrower outside. And the other pieces that they have around Ja and just Ja himself aren't shooters, and I don't think that's going to bode well for them long term. So, um, I'm out on them. Not obviously entirely. I think they're a playoff team. I'd give them a nice 5, 6 seed. I think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're a play-in team. They've obviously got a lot of talent on the roster. But yeah, it remains to be seen some of that grittiness. Who's going to rebound the ball for them? You know, uh, Jaren Jackson Jr. averages like 6.5 rebounds as a 6'11" guy. Um, I need to see more from him. You know, Edie's going to get his rebounds, but is he going to get up and down the floor? There's just a lot of question marks around him, and I can't sign
That
off.
that was his knock in college. Could you get up and down the floor? That dude gets up and down the floor for what, 7'5"? Like if he becomes the piece, I think you alluded to this earlier, Jordan. If he becomes a piece and a solid like rookie of the year candidate, that really raises the ceiling. But that's a big if, considering you're still talking about relying on a rookie, relying on a dude who's 7'5" to stay injury free for 82 games and for to play in and play out every night to be doing things. So that's a fair point.
Jordan will
Haley,
have the Kool-Aid ready. Jordan will have the Kool-Aid ready for you when you want to come join the bandwagon. They'll be ready.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Haley, talk to me.
Desmond would still like a word with you.
He knows where to find me.
Moving on. So I talked about the Suns earlier. They happen to also be my overlock. Um, I Again, the butt effect, the injury, they're just due for some positive regression from all the injuries they had. I'm a big fan of the direction they're going. I think that they'll be closer to a 50-win team, if not over 50 wins this year. My underlock is the Pacers, who the three of you know, anytime I text about them, I call them the Fakers. I do not believe in them. They're a gimmick. And it's funny that Rick Carlisle is on the rules committee or rules board or whatever the name of the group is. And then they want to run a more physical, or they develop more physical rules to be more physical. Sorry, struggling through that. But I don't feel like that lends itself to their play style. They're up and down, high paced. And I remember them being fairly physical, and they did okay with physicality last year in the playoffs when they were playing against the Celtics. But I remember thinking to myself, this isn't their game. And if they start mucking up their up and down pace, they're toast. And they can't play defense at all. They don't care to play defense. And again, I don't believe in their style of play to be to produce long-term success. It's not the same as the 7 seconds or less Suns. I know it's almost like they're trying to replicate a more modernized version of that, and for me, it's not it.
I just want to say that like I've experienced this at least firsthand. Physicality can be a crutch for good defense, and that might be what they're shooting for, right? If you can just be handsy and all over and in their space, maybe that's what they're going to rely on instead of legitimately good defense. I don't think that's going to be a good viable option, but that could be the thought process at least. But I agree. I can see where you're going with that, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I do think that they have a couple of guys who that benefits. Like TJ McConnell likes to be physical. Aaron Nesmith was very physical. They like to be physical, but like Miles Turner is one of the biggest dudes on the floor at all times, and he's soft. Like he plays a similar style to Jaren Jackson Jr., but he's bigger. Like he
I just want to give Miles
He's
Turner a
infuriating.
hug and build Legos with him.
Yeah, no shade to Miles Turner. I enjoy Miles Turner, but it's just that's not. I don't think
Physicality is
that.
not his thing.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think I think they do have some decent physicality on the wings, like you mentioned, and I think a name worth dropping is Matherin.
Sir, yeah,
Mm, yeah.
He I mean, he was their number two option offensively too for a lot of the season last year until he got hurt. So I think getting him back in the lineup next to Halliburton and Siakam is going to do a lot for him. Definitely hear some of the concerns, but I think we'll have to see. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid very similarly to how I drink the Kings Kool-Aid. I think they're a regular season built team.
yeah. Yeah,
He's
I'm similarly out on the Kings. They would have been my other option for a lock for under. Um, basically same idea.
all right. Bring us home on your locks.
My dealer's choice. Ooh, I went with the homer pick. I'm all in on the Hawks going over. They've got the line set at 35.5, I believe. Yeah, it's it's too low. It's just too low. We got better this year. I know that the big name got moved, and y'all know I love DeJounte, and he'll be missed. We also moved one of our best starters slash role players in Sadiq Bey. We didn't move him, but he signed elsewhere, which was sad. But he was going to be missing for at least 6 months, probably with the recovery from the ACL. And Dyson Daniels is that dude. Like he is, I call him Australian Derek White, and he that's I think that's who he will turn into over time. He's not quite there yet, but defensively he's always in the right spot. He's always making plays on the ball. He can be the point of attack defender, which we haven't had probably in the entire time that Trey's been in on the team. We've had kind of like Cam Reddish was the closest thing we had, but he was just so up and down in that role, and we couldn't count on him making the right decisions on the other end. But Dyson's also really smart on offense. He makes the right choices on offense. He's in the right places. He again is a good decision maker. And then Risa Clay. I like to call him Risa Clay because he's got a sweet jumper. But we love Zachary Richache. After watching him play a little bit more and just getting to understand his game, he's just a cerebral player. I don't want to say sneaky athletic, but he is an athletic player. He's not just like a long, lanky spacer, but he can do some things with the ball in his hands. He gets up and down the floor. He knows where to be on both ends of the floor. Just really excited about the wing pieces that we've brought in to complement all the other guys that we already had. Also, a big fan of the Larry Nance pickup. I think he's going to be a nice big to fill in either at the 4 or at the 5, depending on what we need, where we need him. And yeah, I'm all in on their over. My hot take is that they win the Southeast Division.
Spicy. Here for that. All right, let's transition away from our locks. That was a fun segment, gentlemen. Let's do stock up, stock down. Where this is a player segment, so we'll just do real quick hitters on each of the players that we think one that we were really high on for stock up, and one that we're really low on for stock down. So, Josh, start us off. Who you got up and who you got down?
As you know, I after the Boston Celtics, I love the Denver Nuggets. I am a huge Nikola Jokic fan. And the Nuggets' big offseason acquisition was Russell Westbrook. Now, under normal circumstances, Russell Westbrook, as your big name addition to your team, does not bode well for your future prospects. I think Jordan can agree with that pretty wholeheartedly on that. However, the Nuggets bench specifically leaves much to be desired. He is essentially replacing the minutes of one Reggie Jackson. I like Reggie Jackson, but he's 2 years past being 2 years past. And specifically, Russell Westbrook fits a dire need that the Nuggets have, which is kind of transition basketball. They were in the bottom 5 in pace last year. And Westbrook, even at his age, he's still an elite athlete. He's the guy who's going to rip down, rebounds and push the tempo. And it's really the type of thing that I think the team is going to need. It's a perfect marriage of a weakness that Denver had and a strength of Westbrook. So, don't expect him to be shooting, 40% from outside. That is not his strength, but I think his strengths fit well with Denver's needs. I also think his passing with Jokic is going to be, a pretty special thing. Those are two guys who see the court really well. And if, the preseason is anything to be believed, Westbrook screening for Jokic, I like that action with Porter Jr. on the wing. Outside of Porter Jr., we don't really have many shooters, but we're going to ignore that fact. I got some Jamal Murray concerns, but I want to see how the season goes. But I love the Russell Westbrook pickup. As far as my stock down, this might be the part of the pod where Jordan jumps through the screen and strangles me. But dear friend Klay Thompson, I'm out on him. I think he's another guy. Injuries have just ravaged his body. It's not really entirely his fault. He's lost his quickness. He's had some catastrophic injuries. He also went to a team where I hate his fit. In Dallas, it is spread the floor, stand in the corners, let Luka run, high pick and roll. And Clay's been a movement shooter his career. The special thing with the Warriors was the split actions with him and Steph and them running around causing chaos. Now he's just going to be a standstill shooter. And while I think he is completely capable in that role, I wonder if he's going to be happy in that role. He was kind of complaining about his role in Golden State at the end of last year. I also think there's additions in Dallas I kind of like better in their lineup, specifically Quentin Grimes and Najee Marshall. I think those two guys are going to just fit so much better. One for the defensive end, if your wing rotation is Luka, Kyrie, and Clay, I don't think they could stop any of us on the perimeter. And I don't like Clay's fit. I didn't want him to go to Dallas. He's not a stand in the corner kind of shooter. He's capable, but that's not really his game.
So, Josh, would you say your stock up, stock downs are mostly based on change of scenery or the players themselves?
I think in terms of Westbrook, I think it's a change of scenery. What Russell Westbrook is who he's been his entire career for the most part. I think Clay, it's a combination of everything. He's been declining, since the injuries. Again, not a knock on Clay. Some of the worst injuries of a basketball player's career, but he shot the second lowest percentage from 3 last year, and I don't like the fit in Dallas.
Solid. All right. I'll jump in for my next two then. So I'll make them quick, but stock up, Buddy Hield. I love him going to Golden State. I mentioned this before. I think he's going to be a great player, 6-man off the bench, just lighten it up. I mean, I think that's kind of the guy that, we talked about who can you rely on from the Golden State Warriors. We got Steph. We all agree that Steph you can rely on if he's in the game and he's able to play. But who else? I think Buddy Hield you can rely on. You can rely on him as a shooter, maybe not much else, and he might just be giving you points, not much else, and that's fine because you can find other guys to do those things for him. And we're not asking him to lead a team. We're asking him to put the ball in the hoop from beyond the 3-point arc, and that I think he's going to do a lot of that. He's going to get a lot of empty points, and I think that's a stock up compared to where he was and what he was doing. I think he was getting a lot of DNPs in Philadelphia, wasn't he? So this is stock up for me. Stock down. This is not a thought through answer, but Julius Randle, I just don't think he fits as well in Minnesota. I don't think the vibes work. I don't think they need any more grit per se. I think they've got that with McDaniels. I think they got with Ant. I just don't think they need him. I don't think he's adding much value. I mean, he's a good player. I'm not trying to say he's not. I just don't think that he's coming in and be like, all right, this is going to be a guy who's going to move the needle and make us a better team. DiVincenzo, yeah, let's go. I think that's a quality add all day. But I don't know. I was kind of out on Cat for them as well, so I don't know who really wins. I know the Knicks win their trade in my mind, but I don't know if the T-Wolves actually got better. I don't think they got necessarily worse either, but it's probably a net neutral. So
Julius
those are my
Randle
downfalls.
revenge season incoming.
Yeah, probably. That's fair. Haley, who you got for your stock up and down?
I'm gonna do my stock down first. So my stock down, and this one hurts me to say, is Jamal Murray. It's been a painful like last season through the summer. The Olympics were hard to watch when he was on the floor. Like he just did not look good. Something doesn't look right to me. Like he doesn't seem to be moving the same way he used to move. Something doesn't it seems like he's in his head almost a little bit, like he knows something's not right, and so he's trying to account for it. And y'all know because we all hoop, but like when you start doing that, it's almost like a rabbit hole, and you kind of dig yourself into a spot that's really difficult to get out of. But again, I don't know exactly what it is. I can't pinpoint it per se, but when I've watched him over the last year, it's been painful, and I hate saying that because I'm a big Jamal Murray enjoyer. His playoffs are some of the best playoff basketball that we've seen out of a player, especially a non-all-star. But anyways, it's a guy who I hope he'll hit an upturn and get right, but things do not look good for Jamal. My stock up though. So we have a resident Pistons fan here, and I have been trolling all summer. One Cade Cunningham have come up with lots of nicknames like Fade Bummingham, Cade Suckingham, Cade, whatever negative nicknames I could think of. And I started to realize, they finally got a real coach. I know Bickerstaff's not like the best, but he's competent, and they haven't had a competent head coach in at least 2 years. And he'll put together a really sound defensive game plan, and he knows how to run multiple ball dominant guards together. I know that Cade and Ivy aren't necessarily the same as Garland and Donovan, but they were effective in Cleveland. And again, not that they were like top 10 defense or top 10 offense or anything, but he knows how to create some offensive leverage for ball dominant players, even if there's two of them on the same floor at the same time. The other thing that I've also bought into is Ivy's shooting, allowing Cade to do more of what he does really well. The in Cade's first year, I used to call him Luca Light because he does a lot of that kind of slow, methodical, read the floor, and find his I want to say shooters, but he hasn't had a lot of shooters. Find his shooters or his other offensive weapons, Jalen Duren in the dunker spot, things like that. And I'm excited to see what Bickerstaff has them doing to leverage Cade's skills. So I know I've been trolling him all off season, but excited to y'all know I'm a weird league pass Pistons guru. Like they're the first game on almost every night when they get the 7 o'clock slot. So I get a lot of Pistons in my house. So I'm
Love it.
excited to see them.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Awesome. Jordan, last up, what you got for your stock up, stock down on players?
Well, I'm going to stock up kind of on a duo that are on the same team together. Uh, Terrence Mann and Bones Highland. Somebody's got to pick up the PG slack, right? I mean, look, you've got Norman Powell. He's a good player. He's a UCLA guy, so I'm a big fan of his. Um, but he's I think 32 years old now. He's gonna start to make a slow decline, kind of what yeah, I feel like he's gonna make the same decline that an Eric Gordon made in his career. He's a good scorer. He's still gonna put the ball in the bucket, but the place that the Clippers really have some opening for growth, especially if Kawhi can't stay healthy and James Harden isn't who no, if James Harden is who he is at this point in his career, is those guys are going to have a ton of opportunity. You've got two guys that were 10-point a game scorers in 20 minutes. They're going to have their usage rates probably double, if not more, without PG taking up all the touches. I'm a big Bones Highland enjoyer. If one of the two was to take off, I would prefer it to be Bones. He's just had always had a nice place in my heart. So that's my stock up there. Is somebody has to pick up the slack for PG being out, and I think it's going to be one of those two guys. My stock down is sadly going to be Malik Monk. I think that the bringing in of DeMar is going to kind of eliminate Monk's role. Monk's job as a six man was to come in and provide the scoring punch off the bench for that team. But now they've got two guys on the court at all times, basically, that are going to bring that scoring punch even without Monk on the court. And I think that when you've got two guys like Fox and DeMar, who are both guys that want to use screens, well, DeMar isn't a big screen user, but he can use screens and wants to get into the middle, find his spots, get to his mid range, get to the bucket. What they're going to lean into more are their spot up shooters. So I expect upticks from Keegan Murray and Kevin uh where
Herder.
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 I expect upticks from those two guys because they're going to get a lot more spot up shooting opportunities, and they're not going to have the usage available for a guy like Monk, who's originally the spark plug off the bench. So, I've been a big Monk fan throughout his career. I thought he was going to be the next big thing when he was coming out of Kentucky. Um, he's found his role, and I've really enjoyed watching him the last couple of years. I just think he doesn't get the same touches that he's had the last couple of years. We saw Herder get more minutes in 2 years ago, and Monk had like 5 minutes less, and that flipped last year. I expect it to flip back again this year.
Awesome. These are some good locks. It's a good stack ups and stack downs. We'll see how they do at the end of the season. All right, gentlemen, this was a good evening. Next time we'll be hitting end of season awards. We'll also be previewing the first bits that we see of the season. And until next time, keep your friend group tight and your ankle braces even tighter.